crashing down around us. Too big to us. Floating on and on as we rise up.
What am I doing? Reaching out for you. Half open windows, scattered flecks of you. And when you're speaking, I am sure it's true. I can't remember. And your vast sky is an ocean. The surface I've barely broken. I can't think it's all just feeling. It's colored black and blue. It's colored black and blue. And when I show you, you will be there too. Fierce as the starlight, and as distant too. You talk about rain, you talk about running.
Hello, everybody. Let's turn this off. All right. How's everybody doing today? Welcome to the Real Crusades History live stream. Can everybody hear okay? Are we getting some decent audio? Let me know how it's sounding for you guys. Sorry about the time change today. I found out last night that I would be taking a family member to a doctor's appointment today, and so I'm going to handle that. It's going to be actually right at our regular time of 11 o'clock. All right, Sam says I'm audible. Everybody says it's sounding good, so good deal. Like how good? Can you hear it really well? Or let me turn the mic up just a little bit. It's pretty good. All right, welcome guys. Welcome to Coffee and the Crusades. And where's my coffee? I think, oh man. Let me grab my coffee here. Here we go. I can't get going without this. This is the whole point of the show, right? Coffee and the Crusades. So a decent amount of you guys came over despite the time change, and we'll be back on our regular schedule on Friday for the live stream. I have something I want to share with you guys. First of all, just to kind of get it out of the way, powerchat.live is the option for paid questions if you guys want to do that, and that's down below in the description. I will be watching for those if they come in, and that is actually PowerChat Live is a pretty good system. It's all through PayPal and it's very easy. I like it, so that is available if anybody wants to do a paid question. I'm not gonna try to stop you from doing that if you want to do it. And also, of course, I want to share with you guys let's see here, Knights of the Cross is still underway, and we are still moving toward the release of our pilot episode, which we filmed for the TV show back in the beginning of this month. I'm trying to rack my brain for when that was, but really amazing experience we had on that. Sam, our good buddy here, was a huge part of that. He brought a bunch of authentic medieval gear to help deck out the set. We had a couple of different sets. We had green screen on one hand, and then we had an actual tent scene within a tent on the other. And I've seen how some of the editing is going, and it's looking amazing, guys. I mean, the way that we worked with this really great production company called Cinema Forte, and they just did an awesome job. So shout out to Austin Kelly from Christian Channel, who is the host and the producer for Knights of the Cross. A great guy who's really kind of stuck with me all the way through this project, and now we're about to have a big success on it. So knightsofthecross.com, please go check out our website. If you guys can help throw a few bucks toward the project, it is very much appreciated, of course. And there are some pretty cool rewards there too, all the way up to becoming a cast member yourself at I believe that's the $1,000 mark here. You can actually be on the show. But yeah, this is cool. The Knights of the Cross, this is me doing an interview with one of the cast members. I think you can check that out. And there's some cool little, like, this is actually from the day we were filming with the green screen. And this is you can see the tent layout here in the little, and I'm supposedly going to get some stills that we can look at pretty soon. So I will be sharing those once we get those. But anyway, yeah, let's get on with it, guys. Ask me anything about the Crusades. Come up with some questions, and we'll talk about Crusades history. And I have something fun I want to share with you guys. I picked this up. This is the Osprey Men-at-Arms book about the Normans, which is really, really cool. And I pulled some of the artwork out, and it's really awesome. Let me share that with everybody real quick here. Where is that? So we want to stop this screen and jump over to share that little slideshow here. Very cool. Let me find this again here. Yeah, right here. So I want you guys to check this out. This is pretty cool. This is just some really great artwork from the Osprey book about the Normans. I thought it was pretty cool. You can see here. The thing that's great about these books is the accuracy. We really get a good feel for, what the armor, what the costumes looked like at the period. They really do a great job with that. This is a good one. This is early Normandy. You can see here we've got a Norman bishop kind of chastising this Norman knight here. He's got a Flemish sergeant hanging out with him, which, makes sense because there was an alliance between the Count of Flanders and the Duke of Normandy in this early period. And looks like here's a clergyman here, and you can see, which, this makes sense because this was what was going on in Normandy at the time. You had the church with a major influence, kind of an alliance between the bishops and the abbots and the Duke of Normandy. So I like this one. You can see the wooden fortifications and tower back there, which would have been the normal, we think of stone castles, but most of the time it would have been wood. And here we've got, this is late Norman Italy and Sicily. So this is kind of beyond the point when the Normans are really a distinct ethnic group. But this is kind of a cool one. I like the authentic late 12th century armor here. We can see the hauberk with the built-in arms arm covering and mittens. He's got the classic late 12th century helmet that was widespread all over Latin Christendom at this time, with just like this kind of simple face covering, which looks like it's probably a part of the helmet. And this was when we started to see some of that. Then we've got like an Italian archer here, and they've captured what appears to be an Arab soldier with some scale armor he's wearing. So again, you got to love this Osprey stuff. This is very accurate for the late 12th century. This is more what we would have been seeing. And of course, as you can see, it's pretty similar to 11th century armor, which is the thing people forget about the 12th century, is how long those 11th century norms endured. And then we've got, this is a good one. This is from late Normandy, again, from the getting into the late 12th century. Again, we can see kind of the beginnings of the helmets that cover the face, the longer male hauberks, which were becoming more hauberks being the chainmail shirts, which were becoming more popular at the end of the 12th century. But also, of course, we still see kind of the Norman-esque, almost like kite shield type shields. I mean, they're starting to change, but there's a similar element to that. This is the Normans in Ireland. Again, this is actually very late. This is getting into the early 13th century. Again, very accurate for the period in terms of the armor of our knight here. This is even at this point, the full-on helmet covers weren't as common, but you can see he's got this helmet down here that's accurate for the period with just kind of like the face covering there. It's not quite the full-on great helm that got more popular as we get farther into the 13th century. But these are Irish warriors here fighting off an Anglo-Norman knight. Here's some Norman fortifications. Again, the squarish towers that were popular in the 11th through 12th century. The wood fortifications, which would have been the most commonly seen, especially when the Normans were conquering places like Sicily and England, which there's a lot of parallels between the Norman conquest of England and Sicily, in that, you have this small Norman elite kind of trying to occupy and impose itself on a, in one case English and in another case Arab population. This is a good one. This is Anglo-Norman England, early 12th century. We've got a Norman noblewoman here with a squire. Looks like she's kind of like pulling open part of her shirt there. She's got women at this time would have held their dress together with a brooch like this, which are called a fibula or fibulae if you had two of them. But that was pretty much the way that clothing was clasped at this time. They didn't really use buttons or anything like that, but you would use a brooch like a fibula, or you could use laces but she's got the this is the Bliau type dress, which was popular as we get into the late 11th and into the 12th century. It's popular all through that period. We've got, looks like, so kind of a flirtation going on, and this is probably her husband on his way to ruin their evening, as it appears. So sometimes Osprey does a good job with kind of getting some humor in there. But yeah, again, I mean, this is a good representation of what a Norman knight would have looked like in this period. So another good one. And I'm going to jump into the questions really soon here, guys. I just wanted to show these cool images to you guys. They're very cool. Norman ships here, kind of like, everything from during the Norman conquest period up into the 13th century as they're getting more complicated. You can see like the Normans had it very sophisticated shipping in the Kingdom of Sicily. And then here we've got Normans during the First Crusade. And this is a pretty good one. They kind of did a thing here where they had these crusaders dressed in semi-Byzantine attire, which I think would have been fairly accurate for the First Crusade, because you would have had guys who had already spent some time fighting in Sicily or fighting for the Byzantines. This even says up here, Norman ex-Byzantine mercenary for number 2. You can see this guy. He's got kind of a combination of Byzantine plus Norman gear. And, we can kind of imagine that that's partly how some of these influences and changes took place in the Christian West, this interaction with the Byzantines. This is, we would have seen a whole mix of armor in the First Crusade. And some of these guys who already had some experience in the East probably would have been wearing some stuff that looked more Byzantine. But yeah, Normans during the First Crusade. And finally, we get the Principality of Antioch. Here's a Norman, or not really at this point Norman. The Normans as an ethnic group really are kind of not really a thing by the mid-12th century, maybe even the early 12th century. They just kind of mixed with the other ethnic groups in the Latin West. So we've got, a knight from Antioch. This is, mid-13th century. So he's got the full-on great helm. He's got the heater shield. His horse is fully covered in a caparison. And then we got a Turcopole back here, number 3. So these were the native Christian auxiliaries who were often the light cavalry that helped out the heavy cavalry in the Frankish armies of the Crusader states. So I really like that representation. I think this gives us a good sense of what a Turcopole would have looked like. He's got his mail hauberk, but he's also wearing, using fairly light shield. He's got a mace here. I think we can see he's carrying a bow, and so he's an archer. And the Turcopoles were generally mounted archers, so they had that Eastern. These were Eastern Christians who, had mastered that art. And then this here is a Norman French Crusader. It says so. This is somebody who's arrived, I guess, from the West to join the Crusades. A couple of good ones from the Battle of Hastings. This is, of course, a representation of Duke William pulling up his helmet, which is a scene in the Bayeux Tapestry. So I like that one, and I believe that is Bishop Odo, or no, maybe that's Eustace II of Bologna, pointing out, which is, again, this is direct from the Bayeux Tapestry. This is a scene from that. So, okay, I guess that's everything from this little set. But yeah, good set of images. Hope you guys enjoyed that. So now we'll get to some questions. I'll go ahead and pull up the Knights of the Cross website again, just so we kind of keep that in the background as we're doing this. I want people to check that out. knightsofthecross.com. Let's get that up here. Knights of the Cross TV series. And you guys can see, I've got back here, Austin got for me a movie poster from the TV series. I guess TV poster, I guess I should say. Okay, but yeah, let's jump into questions. I'll tell you what, I need to grab a water or something like that. I'll let you guys, this will just take 1 second. I'll be right back. All right, trusty seltzer water to go along with the coffee here, I guess. Let's do that. All right. So, I think we've got a few good questions already up here. So if you guys have questions, go ahead and start shooting them my way. We got a good comment from Sam here. Buttons became popular at the end of the 13th century and dramatically changed fashion going into the 14th century. Right. You will not see buttons in clothing, during most of the Crusades era. I mean, when we're in the 12th century, 11th century, it's just not a thing. Laces were used to close up clothing, or of course, like we were talking about, the brooch, the fibula or the fibulae. A pair of clasping brooches that could be used to hold your cloak together. We see these pretty frequently on the Bayeux Tapestry, and I think it's a good look. I actually think it was a really beautiful element in fashion at that time. John wants to know, do you feel that when the Byzantine Angelos dynasty took over the ERE, which that's the Byzantine Empire, that this ultimately spelled the end of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, as Saladin pretty much knew he could commit to a full invasion? I think it complicated things, but I don't think that was the decisive element. Definitely, during the reign of Manuel Comnenus, this was a huge help to the Crusader states because Manuel was very pro-Latin for the most part. He had a Latin Christian wife. His empress was a Frankish woman, Maria of Antioch. And he had one of his main generals was a Frank. I forget the guy's name, but I think his name was Baldwin. But he performed the best at that decisive battle that Manuel lost, and I think it was 1176. He lost this battle to the Turks that may have been won if his other generals had performed as well as this Frank named Baldwin. But anyway, not to go off on a tangent. But yeah, Manuel Comnenus was a huge help to the Crusader states. He acted as overlord to the Crusader states, which, the Kingdom of Jerusalem was happy to acknowledge him as that. You will see, I believe if you go to the Church of the Nativity today, you can see mosaics that Manuel helped pay for. So that's how closely he was cooperating with King Amalric, during this period. But yeah, when he dies, things kind of fall apart in the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantine Empire under the Angeloi really goes to heck. And it's interesting that you bring this up, John, because I'm actually going to do a video. I've decided I'm going to do this just because I think there would be a huge audience for it. The video is going to be called, "Did the Fourth Crusade Really Destroy the Byzantine Empire?" And I'm not going to give away my argument, I guess, even though we have a pretty small group here on the live stream. But I will just say that I am going to argue that it did not. In fact, I think that anybody who honestly looks at the history cannot conclude that the Fourth Crusade was in any way the decisive blow to the Byzantines. That really was events that took place after the death of Manuel Comnenus in 1180. He dies, and the Byzantines go into a tailspin. You have a dynasty take over called the Angeloi not long after this, and they are I believe Charles Oman calls them the worst dynasty to ever rule in the Byzantine Empire. And this is the truth. They pretty much just squandered the treasury on banquets and partying and brought in Turkish mercenaries to fight each other during their civil wars. So they basically were sicking Turkish contingents on Byzantine villages as they were fighting each other. So they were ravaging their own territory, essentially. They destroyed the Byzantine army. They destroyed the economic base of the Byzantine Empire. These guys were buffoons. You can look them up. This crucial period from the 1180s to the 1190s. Look up what was going on in the Byzantine Empire itself. Look at its actual history. The fact that this kind of ragtag mercenary army from Venice shows up in 1204 and is able to take over Constantinople is in itself shocking, but it's just a sign of the fact that the Byzantine Empire was pretty much done for. They had undermined things so much that there was no viable way to defend the city anymore. So, like Chris is saying here, did the Angeloi dynasty destroy their own navy. Everything. I don't remember exactly what they did with the navy, but they did everything they did hollowed out the Byzantine military. They used a lot of the treasury for personal things like banquets, partying, having fun, and then they fought each other. Like the Angeloi had civil wars with each other, in which they were again bringing Turkish mercenaries into the empire and using them to fight each other. So basically, Turkish mercenaries are burning and plundering Byzantine villages at the behest of the Byzantine ruling elite at the time. It's a stunning situation. And people have the nerve to act like the Fourth Crusade was the problem. I mean, the Fourth Crusade, which wasn't really even a Fourth Crusade, if we're honest about it, it wasn't even really a crusade. It was excommunicated by the Pope before it even got to Constantinople. It wasn't acting as a valid crusade. I mean, they had betrayed their vows. It was a mercenary force from Venice that was carrying out political goals for the Venetians. But yeah, it's kind of like saying, like, let's say you have an individual who has cancer and they struggle with cancer and there's a long decline, and then they get pneumonia in the hospital and then they die of pneumonia. If you were to say, this person died of pneumonia was the decisive thing that killed this person, would that be accurate to say that? No, it wouldn't be accurate at all. They died of cancer, but then at the very end, this opportunistic infection shows up and finishes them off, right? This is the same kind of thing. This is kind of what the Fourth Crusade is. The Fourth Crusade is kind of like an opportunistic infection, I guess you could say. All right, let's get some more questions. I've rambled enough on that one, but I think that's a really cool topic. And again, I think that's going to be a really good video. I think a video with that title is going to get a lot of attention, and I think it's an argument that needs to be out there because, a lot of the stuff on YouTube right now kind of like focuses in on the Fourth Crusade. And the Fourth Crusade it's a big epic type event. It's one of the few times that Constantinople falls to a besieging army. So it's kind of a spectacular, not that it was a good event, but it's a spectacular over the top event. So it's the kind of thing that historians are going to snag the attention of historians. And one of the reasons it's even called the Fourth Crusade, I think, is because when, in the early modern era, when you had these German historians who were numbering the Crusades up, that was one of the ones that, got their attention. So anyway, we'll stop talking about that for now. Let's get to some other questions. Lambert wants to know, and what's going on, Lambert? Glad to see you here. Lambert is a regular. What is your opinion on Stephen of Blois, who was the Count of Champagne during the First Crusade, one of the main leaders? Did he actually want to go on crusade, or was his wife his main motivation? It's impossible most of the time to really comment decisively on the motivation of individuals from this period because we don't really have access to, their personal reflections on things. I mean, we actually do a little bit more with Stephen because he wrote letters to his wife that we still have. But I think that the evidence kind of indicates that he was not a particularly enthusiastic crusader. There's not much evidence that he was a particularly capable military man. He was someone who was married to the daughter of one of them, or perhaps the most powerful ruler in Christendom at the time, William the Conqueror's daughter, Adela. The evidence indicates that she was a very strong personality, which is no surprise. That family was pretty driven. I think that certainly he was a man who was very much influenced by more powerful personalities around him. That does seem to be the indication. His brother-in-law, Robert Curthose, who was a Norman, went on the First Crusade. And that's somebody who I think is sometimes mischaracterized. He, I think, was a very capable field commander, maybe not the best politician, but he was a very helpful member of the First Crusade. He was one of the leaders who really did help get things done. The idea that he was kind of a layabout in the First Crusade, I don't think is accurate. I think that's slander coming from his brothers who wanted to slander him later on. But he performed very well at the Battle of Ascalon, at the Battle of Antioch. The guy was an effective field commander. He was a capable warrior. So so yeah, I think Stephen, he left early. He obviously, that in itself says something, but then he went back. I mean, he dies a hero. He dies at the second battle of Ramla in 1102 alongside the king of Jerusalem, Baldwin the First. So whatever we might say about him, I mean, there's a comment. I think it's Orderic Vitalis who's the one who comments that his wife was upset, and when they were laying in bed together, she would kind of needle him or sort of like henpeck him to get back out there and go on crusade again. And I think there's probably truth to that. I mean, that is consistent with the social norms of the time in terms of there's no question that him coming back, I mean, you can't envy the guy. He comes back at the darkest moment of the First Crusade. He's fleeing what he thinks is a disaster, and then it turns out they win. The First Crusade turns out to be the most spectacular victory of the century. I mean, the guys coming back from it are the celebrities of the age. Imagine being the guy who cut and run before that big victory. That must have been pretty tough. I mean, that must have been pretty tough. I think there's, especially in a warrior culture like this, I think there's no way to deny that. I mean, and the Normans were the toughest of the tough at the time. Adela of Normandy came from the most hard-headed warrior family of the period. It's not hard to imagine that she would have been the kind of woman who would have, her brothers and father were tough fighters. Yeah. And Doyle here says, poor Stephen literally nagged to death. Well, I mean, his death did redeem his reputation. I mean, the chroniclers who talk about him after that happens, he dies at the Battle of Ramla in 1102. It is a redemption. I mean, he died a hero in battle. I mean, I think, maybe he even wanted it that way. Who knows? So, yeah, medieval people, medieval knights, we don't really have people like this in our society today. You have to think about this aristocratic mentality where honor is this overriding concern. People now are a lot more concerned with things like their personal safety, their financial integrity, but medieval knights, I mean, I think a lot of them were quite willing to go down in a blaze of glory if it meant securing their honor. So, okay, let's get some more questions, guys, and then we'll probably wrap it up. This is going to be not a terribly long live stream. I usually try to do these for about half an hour. And just to kind of let everybody know, this live stream, Coffee and the Crusades, which is just kind of a Q&A, just an informal hangout for the Real Crusades history community. I do these every Tuesday and Friday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. So, that's when these happen. I'm doing it earlier today just because I have something I've got to do at 11 o'clock today. So that's why we're here right now. But that's when we normally do this. So you guys can hopefully join me this Friday. It'll be the regular time. It'll be noon Eastern Standard Time, 11 a.m. Central Time. And guys, if you have not done so, please do subscribe to this channel. This is the live streaming exclusive channel. A little bit smaller than my main channel in terms of the subscriber count, but I have noticed that it's steadily ticking up as we do these twice a week. So that's good. Chris says, thoughts on Henry II of England. I think he was definitely a talented king in a lot of ways, but it is kind of striking how poorly he managed his family. I mean, if he had been a bit of a better father, I think his sons would have been loyal to him. It's really kind of absurd when you think about it. I mean, what would be the point of alienating your own heirs? I mean, again, it's like, it's kind of hard to put yourself in the shoes of these people, but yeah, I think he was an extraordinarily bad father, and I think that really had a negative impact on the fate of his kingdom and the fate of his empire. His own wife, betrayed him. Yeah, Lambert here says fatherhood seems to be an afterthought to me with regard to Henry. Yeah, and when you think about it, it was the most important thing he could have done. I mean, and here's the thing: I'm a father myself, and I can tell you right now, being a good parent is actually pretty simple. I'm pretty convinced of this. It's not really about what you do; it's about the love you have for your children and whether or not they know that. If your children feel deeply loved by you and you express that to them, and that's especially when children are small, they need that so much, and that's the whole key. I mean, I think it helps your kids function in every way, and I think that it creates a loyalty in them, and it you teach them how to love, I guess you would say, and you see that reflected in the way they treat each other. Children who are truly loved by their mother and father will love each other like siblings or their cousins. You will see, like I've seen my own 3-year-old son express, genuine sympathy and care and empathy toward his cousins, toward his sister. You see this in small kids, and I think that it all has to do with the way they are, the type of love they receive from you as a parent. Anyway, just kind of going on a parenting rant there, I guess. Sheila wants to know, how can we buy you a coffee? Well, Sheila, if you want to do that, there's a link down below in the description for powerchat.live. You can leave me a paid question. It's very easy. It's just through PayPal and it happens instantly. So that's the option, Sheila, if you want to do that. That is available. And also you can do a question that I can jump over and read out loud here. So, okay. Let's see. Juan, your icon there and your username, quite clever. Was there any important naval battles during the Crusades? Yeah, definitely. I think we could say that 1571, the Battle of Lepanto, that was a crusade. There were crusading bulls in place, for that battle, and also the Venetians won a crucial battle against the Fatimids right before the siege of Tyre began in 1122. During what's called the Venetian Crusade. You guys can look that up. The Venetian Crusade from the 1120s brought to bring aid to King Baldwin II of Jerusalem when they were besieging Tyre, which the Venetians helped accomplish that. And also Richard the Lionheart won a naval battle against Saladin right before he arrived at Acre. He ended up sinking a supply ship that the Muslims had brought to bring relief to the garrison at Acre, but Richard's ships were able to stop that from happening and to destroy that supply ship. So yeah, naval warfare was an important part of the Crusades, most certainly. So yeah, let's get a couple more questions, guys, and then I'm gonna get to work on my current video. I'm working on a video right now. I mean, I've already been working on it, so I'm gonna get back to work on it today, but it's about Fernando III of Castile and Leon, Saint Fernando, who's kind of a famous Crusader saint. He conquered Cordoba and Sevilla during the Reconquista, so he is one of the most important Crusaders in the history of Spain and really the Crusades in general. Chris, speaking of the Venetians, do you think the Byzantines massacring the Venetians in the capital helped doom the Byzantine Empire? Yeah, I think that, in general, that kind of those tensions, played a decisive role in, the Byzantine Empire failing ultimately. Definitely. Here's an interesting one. Which were more brutal in killing civilians and destroying cities or villages, Muslims or Crusaders? I think generally we can say that there were times when Crusader or Muslim armies showed leniency to a conquered population. There were times when they did not. And generally this was according to whether or not the city resisted a siege. I think we can see both. I mean, it really just depends. I mean, we can find examples all over the scale from both sides. I mean, that's just the reality. Partly that's just because we're talking about so much history. I mean, we're talking about, 3 or so centuries of history here. You've got, um, you've got everything, like on the Muslim side, you've got everything from a guy like Saladin, who generally tended to let populations go for the most part. Not always, but frequently he did. And that was not because he was necessarily a nice guy. It's because when he was conquering the kingdom of Jerusalem, he wanted to do it quickly. He didn't want to face long sieges. He preferred to make he had so many cities and castles to take, that he wanted to get it done before a crusade could arrive. So he would tell the garrison, the population of a town or a castle, look, just, surrender and you guys can go. And that's it. And, he did that on many occasions. He didn't do that with Jerusalem, which is interesting, but he's portrayed as doing that in Kingdom of Heaven. But you've got that. You've got Saladin. And then on the other hand, you've got Baybars, who was an absolute brutal, bloody thug tyrant who would just kill everybody and just slaughter everything. And I mean, you really see every kind of like possibility with this on both sides. I think it would be hard to say, this side, especially between those two really broad categories. If we're talking about Crusader and or Christian and Muslim factions throughout the whole history of the Crusades, that in itself covers a lot of history, a lot of different personalities and leaders. So, LG, how can cavalry fight against cavalry? Do they just run into each other and crash? Sounds like a suicide. No, I mean, I think it depends on the situation. If you read, there's a Muslim chronicler named Usama ibn Munkid. If you guys want to read a little bit about how small cavalry units fought each other in kind of the Middle Ages, like the 12th century, that's a really good book to look at, because he talks about these small time raids where he and a small group of Arab horsemen would maybe meet a small group of Frankish horsemen, and they've got their lances, they've got their shields. They kind of, they would kind of like spar with each other. That there'd be a charge, there'd be like a pull back, there would be a lot of kind of like one-on-one type fighting, or maybe one guy would kind of like, wheel around and kind of like try to hit another guy with his lance. I mean, it was all about trying to strike your enemy with your lance and either kill him or knock him off his horse, and try to avoid the other guy from doing that to you. So it's very, it was you got to think that these were guys who were very capable. I mean, you grow up learning this type of warfare. If you've ever ridden a horse, riding a horse is tough enough. Imagine being able to kind of maneuver a horse in the field when you're fighting, when you're engaged in combat. I mean, these guys were the athletes of the athletes. This was a very capable type of skill set that these guys were able to employ. And, it's kind of fascinating to read about. But yeah, I would recommend checking out that book if you want to read. He gives a lot of really good personal experiences where he talks about this type of fighting. And it's smaller scale, because he was from a small kind of castle that didn't have a lot of resources. And so they were often, doing these small time raids. And a lot of the cavalry warfare in the Middle Ages would have been like that. It would have been small groups of horsemen against other small groups of horsemen. And I think on the one hand, there was definitely an effort to keep together. Like one thing the enemy side would try to do would be to separate parts of your cavalry, or even get one person off on their own, so you could kind of like destroy him. And then you've at that point picked off a little bit more of the strength of your enemy. So there is an effort to kind of stay together, but also to kind of get in at the right moment and really get at your opponent. Again, the goal is always you've got your lance, you want to hit the other guy with your lance, you want to knock him off his horse, you want to kill him. But that's tough to do, because he's trying to do the same thing to you, and he's got a shield, he's got armor. One thing that's cool about this book, let me just actually find it really quick here. Usama ibn Munkid. I'll show you guys his name here, so you can look it up yourselves. Right there. One thing that's really good about that book is, again, because it's kind of from his personal experiences, and he talks about some really weird situations too. Like he talks about a horse getting hit in the chest and its skin, like a bunch of its skin getting torn off, and yet the horse is still able to fight for a while. And then finally, when the battle's over, that horse like collapses. He talks about a guy getting struck, like in the shoulder or kind of in his chest, and the lance is like embedded there, and later they're able to pull it out, and then he recovers fully. And he talks about, people getting killed from far lesser wounds. So he kind of gives, a lot of interesting insight in that regard. But I would recommend picking that up. But in terms of like the larger armies, I do think that most of the time cavalry was employed more to try to disrupt the enemy army. And once that was done, then they could, most of the time with enemy cavalry, if you're going to defeat them in battle, they're going to retreat because they've got horses. Now, if you're able to break them up and get them really, in a lot of confusion, then you can pick them off. But, the point of the cavalry charge from the Frankish perspective is you want the cavalry to remain together, for one thing. You want them to be able to punch a hole in the enemy and disrupt the army to an extent that there's enough chaos that, for example, the infantry can come in and start hacking people down. I mean, think about the Battle of Arsuf. At the Battle of Arsuf, the Christians waited until Saladin had fully committed his army, and then they launched this huge cavalry charge that throws Saladin's army into total confusion. And then after that, the infantry can run up behind and start killing people, can start taking out the wounded. And then the Christian cavalry after that can then engage in pursuit of the disordered enemy army, and they can take out a lot of people that way. So long answer to that question. But, okay. Lambert here says cavalry is a shock force meant to set infantry to flight. Yeah, partly. It's not just for that, but it's also to set enemy cavalry into flight, or it can be for that as well. It can be, but that's a crucial thing. It's just to disrupt. Medieval warfare is all about disrupting the cohesion of your enemy's army. If you can do that, you've pretty much won. Maybe they can retreat, but if they're retreating in disorder, you can do a kind of a devastating pursuit that wipes a bunch of people out. Yeah, and Sam says, in other words, the initial cavalry charge is intended to break enemy unit cohesion. Exactly. Okay, we'll take one more question. It's going to be this one. I can't give you an exhaustive answer to this because of time constraints, but what were the advantages of the army of Muslims and Crusaders? I would say that just in general, let's just talk about the Holy Land. We won't talk about Spain because that's a totally different thing. But in the Holy Land, the advantage the Muslims had was their mounted archers, I would say, and the fact that they had a lot of mounted archers and in a lot of their armies. They were quick. They could get in and out. They could create confusion. They could, spray the enemy army with arrows and then come in and out and do that a lot. And, again, the goal there is to eliminate their enemy army's cohesion. For the Crusaders, it was more about their effectiveness as heavy cavalry. They tended to have better armor, although, the Muslims did adapt to that quite a bit. They tended to be better hand-to-hand fighters. Usually when it came to close quarter fighting, the Crusaders tended to do better. So if the Muslims were put in a situation where they couldn't really get away from the Crusader heavy cavalry, that would be a very tough thing for them. An example of this, Tancred of Antioch once lured a Turkish army to an area that was so polluted with stones that the Turkish horses could not maneuver effectively. And so the Turks were pretty much cut to pieces because the Crusaders could kind of just like get right on top of them. So there's that. And then I also think another advantage the Crusaders had was the crossbow. Crusader armies tended to have infantrymen armed with crossbows, and this was quite effective. These were the best bows at the time, and they could really devastate an enemy army. Those are just a couple of little things. We could go a lot more into it, but we're going to go ahead and end things for now. I'm going way over my normal time here. But okay, El Cid, do you believe that Richard was somehow involved in Conrad's assassination? I don't. I think there's pretty much no chance of that. Maybe we'll talk about that more next time. Okay, guys, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Please go to knightsofthecross.com. Oh, wait a minute. Up. Okay, I'm glad I caught this. Somebody sent a power chat. Okay, I'm glad I didn't miss that. All right, let's get in. Oh, it's from Sheila. Oh, she did buy me a coffee, she says, just like the stream. Okay, thanks, Sheila. I appreciate that. All right. Okay, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this stream. Please join me again Friday, 12 noon Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Central Time. We will be back with another stream on Friday. It's always fun. Go to knightsofthecross.com. Check that out. And please do subscribe to this channel, guys, if you have not done so. I'm trying to build up the numbers on this channel, so please give it a sub. And yeah, it's been fun. We'll talk to you soon. Talk to you on Friday.